We're here with Scott Crabtree, and Scott, some of your roots go into gaming and computer gaming, and that's where you kind of cut your teeth at times with Intel. Right now, video games in the industry of cognitive wellness, they have a place, and it's a place that's about 10 years old from when Nintendo came in with their Brain Age, followed by Posit Science, and now it's a wild west out there of lots of games. And the science is now building, supporting certain things that are really remarkable about using games as a tool, as an asset for different types of health benefits. Give me your take on that.
Yeah, well, it's a great question and a topic that I'm passionate about. So let's start in the beginning, if that's okay, because essentially we are coming off of decades of conventional wisdom that video games are bad for kids, violent video games lead to kids being violent, etc. And if you look at the solid scientific evidence, and not all science is solid, that's really part of the problem. Some of the very first studies done on video games and violence suggested that exposure to violent media may lead to more violence. Those were really not very good studies, and I don't have time here to go into all the details of the mechanisms, but if you look into that, the book Killing Monsters by Gerard Jones does a good job of explaining how some of that early science was pretty flawed. That really tainted the science of video games for quite a while, so that everyone was looking.
It tainted especially the public's awareness of the science. Now, Scott, let me build a structure here. Just like Michael and I look at the science that's evidence-based, and we take those that really can stand the test of time before we connect some dots. That's what you're doing in explaining that when the science is there and it gets public awareness, you have to wait for the science to be replicated and better studies to come in. And there have been a wave of better studies, so keep going.
There have been a wave of better studies. And to be clear, there's mixed evidence on whether very violent video games can lead to violence in some. It's not crystal clear. There's some conflicting findings, but the general building consensus is that playing violent video games does not necessarily lead to violence at all. To the contrary, it may be a healthy release for some. So first of all, I just wanted to start with the older perception that video games are evil and not so fast. Among other factors, video games are like movies or books in my mind, in that there is tremendous variety. I mean, I could go play a video game and I could shoot people, or I could pick them up in an ambulance and take them to a hospital. I could be deep sea diving with no points and a very relaxing experience, or I could be building an army in real time to invade your city. Video games have as much variety as books and movies. So saying video games aren't educational is like saying books aren't educational. Depends which book you're talking about. So then we're getting into specific books, specific video games, as you were asking about, that are designed to teach people or help people. I am so excited about this development because I know the power of games. Games can be so compelling. Games are fantastic at getting you into flow because good game designers can design an experience so that the experience stays just at the edge of your ability.
It's that carrot in front that just keeps you going.
If the game's getting a little too easy for you, the game can make itself harder for you. If you start to get overwhelmed, the game can make itself easier for you. So games.
And this comes from someone who designed these and
designed and developed video games for many years before deciding the science of happiness was even better than video games. So games can be wonderful for immersion, engagement, and getting into flow. Anything you do repeatedly changes your brain, as you know. So the question is, what would be good and useful to do repeatedly in a video game that might lead to other benefits? And so, as you said, we're seeing a lot of brain training games that theoretically will help us get faster in our ability to think or see patterns or react to new visual information or whatever a game might be trying to teach us. Now, as far as I have seen, you talk a lot about reading a lot of science, connecting the dots. I really view my role as somebody who can understand the science and try to interpret and translate it for the public in a way that's accurate. There is mixed science about whether those brain training games are having benefits that are localized to the activity you're doing or generalized across to other activities. What's abundantly clear is that if you play a game over and over again that's designed to increase your reaction speed in that game, your reaction speed will increase in that game. So can games improve something you're doing? Yes. Can you take that reaction speed benefit and broaden it to all other kinds of situations, including driving or hiking or something? Some evidence is starting to hint yes. Some evidence is saying not so fast. So as you said, it's kind of the Wild West when it comes to video games and the brain. I encourage people, as always, to experiment with their own lives. How do you feel after playing a game?
How do you feel? Keep going.
Yeah. Do you feel better after playing a game or worse after playing a game? Do you feel better when you play a game for 20 minutes or 2 hours?
So you're finding the right dose of the right game.
The right dose
And
of
that's
the
why
right game, yes.
if we've got the ability to educate people to choose from a broad menu, but keep choosing the samplers of the chocolates until you buy a box of one chocolate.
Yes.
That seems to be the key to get someone in the flow. What's the dosage? How many minutes and how often? That's for you to determine, but also there's research giving you at least the broad generalities. We're going to wait for those to come in.
Yes, and I'm so glad you talked about dosage and duration some more, because really that's a central factor for me when it comes to video games. Because video game designers and developers like me, we know how to get you addicted to something, right? I want to share a quick anecdote. One of my clients happens to be a major video game company that makes some of the most successful games on the planet. And I said one time in a class, I said, look, I'm a game designer, you're game designers, we know how to get people addicted to things. Guy in the back of the class says, we prefer extremely compelling. I was like, okay, extremely compelling if you want, but really, we know how to hook people into something. That's great to build an engaging experience. It's not so great if you play 2.5 hours longer than you really wanted to.
That's right.
And you start to isolate from other human beings because the game is so well designed to keep you engaged. So to me, there's a double-edged sword with games. The way they can engage you and get you into flow is awesome, as long as they don't keep you there too long, keep you away from other human beings.
Or physical activity.
Or physical activity. Now, some of the best games out there, again, this is why I say games are like movies, there's such variety. Some of the best games out there right now, in my opinion, are games that get groups of people up and moving together in real time next to each other in the same physical space. Then you're getting exercise, social contact, and the immersion and flow of playing games at the same time. That's wonderful. I get concerned when somebody's playing a game by themselves, not really connecting with other people, and they might play longer than they really wanted to because of the extremely compelling nature of games. So deciding your own dosage ahead of time. I'm going to set a timer for 40 minutes and play this game, and then I'm going to go connect with my friends. That's a great strategy for experimenting with your own life and managing games so they're working for you, not against you.
Excellent. Part of the controversy, I think, is that in the field of gerontology, those video games that are designed to keep someone's attention and get them better at playing the game don't yet transfer to ADLs, activities of daily living.
Exactly.
But one thing it does do is to bring that confidence level that they're learning something new,
Yes.
they're achieving something that might have some benefit. So even though it may still be in its early stages, it's better than watching the 24/7 news
Yes.
that is all
Yes.
the downhill negatives.
Yes.
And I want to spend some time here. We went to video games.
Yeah.
How do you feel that zoning in on negative news? Oh, but Scott, my dad only has it on in the background, so he doesn't really watch it, except that he sits in his Barca-lounger all day long and doesn't watch it. The sound goes into your ears, and there are no earlids invented. God
Yep.
didn't invent them.
Yep.
So it goes into your brain that, oh, I've heard that story before. Why would someone, and rhetorically, why would someone keep that on if in fact it's hurting that person's brain?
That's a great question, and I think part of what came out from the Positive Psychology Conference again is, this is going to be an analogy here, but if you were my manager, the worst thing you can do to me is not be negative and critical with me. If you're negative and critical with me all the time, that's not great. Mm-hmm. It's not nearly as good as you being positive and focusing on my strengths. But the worst thing of all is for you to completely ignore me. So I'd rather have you be negative than ignore me. Mm-hmm. I think people turn the TV on and leave the TV on because it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
But what they fail to realize is that whether they're consciously paying attention or not, that negativity is getting into your brain. And now for some people, the news can be very engaging. They need to know what's going on in the world. They might take action as a result. They feel alive and in flow, connected to politics. If that's you, great, experiment with your own life. But for many of us, the news is just depressing. I mean, you turn on the news, it is not, hey, look at all these people who are getting great exercise and keeping their minds sharp well into old age and having thriving lives. It's about depressing, awful things. So this to me relates to commuting and driving, because according to science, commuting to work in the morning is one of the least happy times we have in all of life. Mm-hmm. So what do a lot of people do on that commute? They listen to the news. I think that's part of why it's a sad experience, is listening to the news can be depressing. So I, like I'm sure you, want people to be intentional about what's getting into their brains. Whether you're consciously paying attention to the TV or not, those words are getting into your brains. And you and I have seen countless studies where people can be primed, right? If I ask you, hey, how much is my card game that teaches people the science of happiness worth to you? If just before then I said, by the way, oil is selling for about $500 a barrel now, you'd give me a higher price than if I said, hey, my coffee this morning was $5.
Right.
Subconscious priming works for the good, for the bad, for the ugly. So choose what's getting into your brain and fill your brain with new, challenging, helpful information. We were talking about games and whether or not you can see broad effects. Can learning this game have a broad effect on the brain or your life? What is abundantly clear from the neuroplasticity research that you and I enjoy so much is that one of the best ways of preserving your brain's ability to rewire is to keep learning new things. So don't just leave the same channel on. Don't do the same crossword puzzle over and over again. Don't do the same game over and over again. Keep learning new things, and you're maintaining your brain's ability to learn new things and stay fresh.
And as you're creating that habit of having those surprises and new things you're learning, wouldn't we be able to envision a day in the life of someone who is thriving that they would listen to the news for a while,
yes,
intentionally,
yes,
and then they turn that sound and that channel off and maybe listen to music with no commercials, just music for a while, and do the other things that they're doing, read the paper, and then an hour later switch the TV on and see if the world is still there and see if it's the same stories. And I criticize in lots of lectures those streamers on the bottom third that say developing story, breaking news, and my thought is, when it's developed, get back to me. I'm not going to wait as you hyperbolize how many people might be involved. And that's the negativity that I think needs to be broken with things like find something that brings the joy, enjoy it, and then turn on the news for a little bit and then do something else and learn something new.
Yeah.
Your video games, doing that for a time period of time would be a perfect brain break from that world that is so pervasive of the 24/7 news.
Yes.
Keep going.
Exactly. So I love what you're saying, Roger. It's largely, I think both of us, certainly I, want people to be intentional about their choices. And the problem in the modern world is that a bunch of people are trying to get your attention and keep your attention.
Keep your attention.
So
exactly.
that runner along the bottom of the news is intended to keep you there even when they're talking about something you're not interested in. Or even when they're going to commercials, like, wait, because we're coming back with this top 10 list or this news story or this.
Yeah.
And look, video game designers and developers like me do exactly the same thing. We're going to start you playing them. We're going to keep your attention, keep you engaged, keep you going. So the world is trying to get your attention and keep it on one thing. My question for everybody out there is, where do you want your attention to be?
Okay.
Be intentional about your attention so that you and your brain can thrive.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
My
I've been
pleasure.
looking
Thank
forward
you
to this
so
one.
much,
Thank you.
Roger. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.